Welcome, everybody. So this is part two of this classifier series that I'm putting together. In part one, we just discussed the core concepts of classifiers. So at a very high level, what is a classifier? Essentially, it's a sorting machine. And in the first the first part, we just looked at how the pipeline works. We used a very simple classifier example, which was a sorting machine to put vegetables into different boxes. And as I mentioned at the end of that video, not a solution that you usually use in the business world. I guess maybe if you were working on a farm, that you could build a robot that did that. But it was a very simplistic solution. And in this second part today, we're going to look at a spam filter. So a spam filter is a great implementation of a classifier. It's a real world problem. There's already a lot of spam filters out there. But you could build a filter, a data filter for other solutions in the business, in a work environment. One could be separating up tickets to assign them to different teams. That's a great implementation right there of a classifier. So before we get started, make sure your environment is set up. There is a link in the description of this video which goes over and describes all the tools you need to get set up building. So, I'm using VS Code editor, I'm using Python, and I'm using Anaconda. So Anaconda is a great way of packaging all of your machine learning and data science Python packages up into one. I enjoy it because it makes life a little bit easier. It has access. There's access to a lot of packages that are readily available within Anaconda, so it's nice to use. So I'm going to break down this classifier project that we're working on into several parts. And this is part two of that multi-part series. I would recommend having a look at part one before getting into the code. It's going to kind of clear up what is a classifier, give you those fundamental ideas and concepts about what a classifier is and how it works. A very simple AI and machine learning problem. And solution to a problem, but at the same time, there are a few little concepts in there that will help you in that first video that will help you in this part two and actually getting into coding. So today I'm just going to create the shell of the solution. We're just going to create an environment, install some Python packages, and then create the outline of the spam filter. So without further ado, let's get started doing that. Okay, everybody, so in step one of this spam filter project that we're working on, the first thing we're going to do is, after you've set up your local folder, so I've created a local folder, and I've opened my VS Code editor within that local folder. So just to make sure that everything's contained within one folder, you know where that folder is. The first thing you're going to do is create a Conda environment. Spam filter env. So we'll call it a spam filter env. And once we've created this environment, everything we do is going to be within this environment for the solution. I always create a unique environment for each project that I'm working on, just to ensure that you don't end up with too many unnecessary libraries in your solution. So next step is to activate this environment. So once we have it activated, we know that everything we're working on, everything we're doing is within that environment. We're going to install Python in this environment as the first step, 3.14.6. So we have our spam filter environment set up. We have Python installed. I'm just clearing the screen here so you guys can see what I'm doing. Now we're going to install something called pandas. So pandas is for working with data sets. It's a pretty widely used Python package that's used to work with data sets and convert them into different formats. So we're going to need that for our spam filter to start with. Yes. Let's clear the screen again so you guys can see. And then finally, we're going to install the libraries that we need to build our classifier. So if you think of it, what we are working with here is one library for the data management and the conversion of the data formats between different formats. So you're working with for example, a dictionary, and you want to convert it to a different, like a data frame. That's what pandas will be used for. The scikit is a machine learning library, and it has a good classifier built into it. So we'll be using that classifier today. So that concludes step 1. Let's move on to step 2. Okay, guys, so for step 2, we are going to implement our classifier. So first step, create a file, call it email classifier.py, like this. And then we're going to start importing all the things we need. So all of the packages that we got set up in our environment in step 1, we're going to get those to be available in our classifier file. sklearn.model_selection. So this here is for train test split. This is our preprocessor function. So all of this stuff you're gonna see us using when we get into like subsequent steps, when we start defining all of the code in each one of these pipeline steps. From sklearn dot naive Bayes. Well, actually, let's do feature extraction. Feature extraction dot text. Import. So this is the vectorizer that's going to be used. TFIDF vectorizer. So we talked about in the first part of this classifier, these classifier lectures, the concept of vectorization, of converting words into vectors and features. So that's what a vectorizer does. So from sklearn, and this is going to be our classifier. So naive Bayes import nomial naive Bayes. Okay, and then finally from sklearn metrics import accuracy score and import classification report. So these are going to be used to evaluate the model. And this is something we discussed also in the first part, is model evaluation is very important. So let's lay out some functions here, the pipeline functions. So the first thing we're going to do is create, let's call it mock or training data. So let's create a function to do that, to help define training data. So create spam data set. So that's the first function, and we're just in this step, we're just going to lay out the pipeline. We're not going to put any details in there just yet. So step 2 is text pre-processing and splitting. So def pre-process and split, and we're gonna pass in some parameters here. So test size equals 0.2, and random state equals 42. So the test size is just the percentage of the model that's going to be used for testing. So if 20% is for testing, then 80% will be for training. So number 3, step 3, is feature extraction. Feature extraction. So feature extraction, def extract features, x underscore train, and x underscore test. So that is the feature extraction portion. 4 is going to be model training. Let's just put a period after this to keep things consistent and neat. Model training. So we'll just call this function train underscore model, and x underscore train, it's a TF IDF, and it's y underscore train. So, TF IDF just indicates, in inverse document frequency, term frequency, and inverse document frequency, as we discussed in part 1. So 5 would be model evaluation. So model evaluation, we'll just create a function called def evaluate model. Evaluate, underscore model. Pass in model x test tf idf and y test. So there's only one more step that we have to do. Step 6 is going to be predict. Predicting this. Predict. You can say live inference. Call it that. So def predict underscore spam underscore spam and message model vectorizer. Okay, like that. And let's just fix this here. Evaluate. Okay, so this is just laying out the pipeline itself. And so the next step, what we're going to do is we're just going to fill in all these. We're going to start by filling in these functions and discussing a little bit more detail what each one of these functions does. But it's important just to understand the entire, the pipeline and the sort of the overall, or I would say the bird's eye view of how this process works. So creating a data set, pre-processing and splitting data. So this is manipulating the data to get it into a format that we want, extracting features, training the model, evaluating the model, and then the actual function that predicts the spam. So we do all of this in one fell swoop. So in the next step, we're going to start drilling into each one of these functions and filling in the blanks a little bit. And then what we'll do is we'll create a main function that is going to execute this entire pipeline. So see you guys in the next step.